Hi, good morning. My name is Dan Hulse. I just wanted to thank, first off, Aortic Hope for having me or giving me the opportunity to tell my story, my survivor story, which was quite an ordeal. This dates back to April of 2015, and prior to that, I would say, just to give a little bit of background on myself, I'm a born and raised New Englander, grew up between Massachusetts and Rhode Island, grew up as an athlete, played college soccer at the University of New Hampshire, and coached afterwards for a season at Holy Cross in Massachusetts. And from there, I kind of pursued athletically endurance racing, marathoning, as well as Ironman triathlon. I ran the Boston Marathon a few times and culminated my Ironman triathlon experience with the Ironman World Championship in Kona, Hawaii in 2002, which I finished in 11 hours, 46 minutes. It was a pretty amazing opportunity. But with that said, I just wanted to explain the fact that from the standpoint of my aortic dissection, which I had a type AB aortic dissection in 2015, I did have an athletic background built in and around endurance and running, cycling, swimming. So my doctors have said that that really greatly helped my recovery and the ability of my body physically to handle the situation. So with that said, and as well to give a finality to the background of where I am up to date, back in 2000, February of 2000, I moved to San Diego to pursue my career in sales, sporting goods sales, was involved in the endurance sporting goods industry, worked for a few companies, Aqualung, Cirrus is another company I worked for as a sales manager, and was involved in that space. So I was in and around athletics often and training quite often. And from there, got married, and we had 3 children. I have 3 sons now, ages 14. Dylan's 14, Jackson's 12, and Braden's 13. Braden's 11. Sorry. So in any event, going to the date of my my episode, or first episode, I'd say, was back in April of 2015, and I had I was at home by myself. My wife at the time had taken our kids to school, and I was picking up in and around the house, and I just didn't feel right. Something didn't just. That's all I can say is that's really the prevailing feeling I had. I had chest pain. It wasn't too severe, but it just didn't feel right. I thought I was going to pass out. So I, kind of sat down, tried to have some water. I went upstairs in our home to our bathroom, and I remember looking in the mirror, and I was white, almost gray, ashen, like a ghost, and it really freaked me out. I called, my wife at the time, and she came home, took me to the ER. They initially had tested me, EKG, everything came through that I did not have a heart attack. They said they didn't want to admit me. My mom actually arrived. It's just myself and my younger brother, who's a physician here in San Diego. And in any event, my grandfather had early heart attacks before he passed of heart surgery, and as well our dad passed at 61, and we didn't have an autopsy on him, but figured he had either an aneurysm or heart surgery himself. So along with my uncle lives with an aneurysm, it hasn't expanded enough in size, and so I've had a history of this type of heart and or vascular disease in my family. So in any event, the hospital did end up admitting me, went through a whole bunch of tests, blood work, everything checked back fine. And I got to the point where the next morning they had me do a running treadmill test, which I passed through fine, of course, with my endurance background, and everything seemed fine. They told me I had an esophageal spasm. They sent me home with my paperwork that next day, and it told me to go get a CT scan in the future once I contacted my primary care physician. So in any event, that was the week of my birthday, which is April 17th. And my birthday fell on a Friday, and this was on a Tuesday that I had gone in the hospital. So by the time Sunday came around, I had that feeling again, and I just didn't feel right. I remember getting to the point where, you know, I had asked my son to go get, I was upstairs in our home, and I asked him to go get me a Gatorade, and I just figured it would pass because they, you know, had told me it was, you know, more or less a severe heartburn. And by the time I sat down on our couch upstairs in my office, I all of a sudden I couldn't feel below my waist, and that really was freaky. It freaked me out. Of course, we called my brother, and he, of course, you know, right away said, you know, get to the ER as soon as you can. And he of course had an understanding that I had a dissection from his training. And my neighbors, they have a couple of neighbors at the time that were bigger teenagers, athletes, and they carried me downstairs, and off we went. By the time we got to the hospital, we pulled up, and I saw the stretcher come out. That's the last thing I remember. And for a period of the next few, you know, hours, I believe, or as they prepped for my surgery, I, you know, was admitted. They sedated me, so I understand that that's what, you know, took away the prior, you know, term of my memory up until that point, and prepped me for open heart surgery, which I had that Sunday night. So that was April 20th of 2015, and fortunately I wasn't cognizant of having my family come in and say their goodbyes. My 3 kids were brought in, and I kissed them all goodbye. It was pretty surreal. And off I went to surgery. So the next thing I remember was I had been put in a 1.5-day coma, induced coma, because of the fact of the strenuousness of the surgery. I was a little over 9.5-hour surgery. Jeffrey Rosenberg was the cardiac surgeon that operated on me, and I had 3 strokes on the table, 2 frontal lobe, 1 rear lobe. I had my kidneys failed. It just on down the line, but fortunately I survived the surgery. It was a, you know, 1.5 days. I actually heard my 2 friends, Mike Macri and Troy Graves. I heard their voices, and they woke me up. You know, but from then I was in the hospital for 2 weeks in intensive care. I really don't remember much from that period. It was really difficult. I was on dialysis for 2 weeks. And fortunately my kidneys recovered. I did have lasting nerve damage, peripheral nerve damage in my right leg, and had to have a femoral bypass to my right leg to get enough blood flow. So after that 2-week stay in the hospital at Palomar Hospital in San Marcos, California, I was transferred to their rehabilitation hospital, which I stayed for another 2 weeks plus there, so I could continue to rehabilitate and prepare myself to recover at home. And from that point, I practiced, you know, walking, of course, was difficult. You know, I would walk a little bit, and as well move the wheelchair around the floor I was on. There were practice stairs I worked on, and ultimately I did get home 31 days later, and then began my recovery. I still had staples in my chest. We moved my sleeping arrangements in our home. We moved downstairs in our home, and I began my recovery, which was very long. I would say, from the standpoint of recovery, one point that I would make is make sure you, no matter what, and I understand from an aortic dissection standpoint, there are all different types and all different kinds of recoveries, whether it's in type A, type B, and how it affects you. I had Dr. Rosenberg installed an aortic valve. So I have a St. Jude metal artificial aortic valve. And that actually brought on quite a bit of anxiety for me early on, just because hearing the clicking sound was pretty discerning. I just really, just was off-putting for me. When I would lie awake at night, when it was really quiet, I would just hear it click. And it took a while, months and months, for me to get comfortable with it, because it just really, it's hard to explain. It just freaked me out. Ultimately, I came to terms with it years later and almost wear it like a badge of honor and understand that clicking is what keeps me alive. So I've gotten through that. But I was going to say, from a recovery standpoint, I tried to come back too soon, I'd say, in all realms of my life. I didn't really necessarily look at the surgery, nor did anyone around me. And I think that's one thing that what I'm saying that I would specifically tell you, whether you've been diagnosed or you're recovering now, is to really pay attention to how you feel, and understand that it's major open heart surgery, and it could potentially take you a long time, physically, mentally, emotionally, to handle. And it has taken me a long time. It's something I still deal with today. I've had many years of therapy. And when I initially, because of my physical pain, primarily, of course, in my chest, where my chest had been opened up, but also the peripheral nerve damage I had in my right leg, which I currently have about 65% feeling. I've had a really tough time with that. It almost feels like my leg's asleep most of the time. When during the day, I don't really notice it as much, but at night, when it's quiet, when I have my leg up, my foot will throb. The pain gets more severe the further down my leg to my feet. I guess diabetics deal with something similar to this, as I understand it. But in any event, at the time of 2015, I was prescribed opiates, leaving the hospital, and I took morphine in a pill form as well as Dilaudid for, amazingly to say, it was over a year after my surgery. And it finally got to a point where I just came, I had understood that my body, without knowing it, with having no experience with this, was becoming dependent, or was dependent, because I'd been taking them for so long and they were prescribed. So in any event, got to the point, was able to wean off them over a short period of time. And then from there, all of my care has been through Kaiser Permanente here in San Diego, and they've been absolutely incredible. And I was able to be proactive. And that's one thing else I would say too that's important, is you have to be proactive with your health. Don't rely on while your doctoral and your nurse care and the hospital and health care that you have, I'm sure, is amazing. You need to focus on yourself and rely on yourself, because, as I said, I didn't realize the severity of the major surgery. And after I got home, I just kind of went about, getting back to my life, and I just wasn't ready. And there were a lot of things that happened there. I had, family problems that were very extensive. And with being out of work, there were financial problems. So all these things you need to really pay close attention to. And in any event, within Kaiser, I took the time to contact them and found they had a physical pain management department, and that includes psychologists, psychiatrists that can help you deal with, and their classes to help you deal with other alternatives, which are many, whether it's meditative, praying therapy, physical therapy, on down the line. So many different, avenues, whether it's yoga, what have you, to help aid you naturally deal with your pain rather than take opiates. So, as the years went on, I continued to recover, and it was back towards the end of the fall of 2020 that I came to find out that my vascular surgeon at Kaiser, Dr. Racklin, had informed me through our ongoing annual CT scans that my lower aorta, which my lower aorta they never had touched during surgery because they didn't have enough time. My lower aorta had started to expand in size, so we monitored it for some time. It went from 3.5 centimeter over the years to it was approaching 5 centimeter, and we realized that we had to seriously start looking at the potential for surgery. Up until this point, from a physical standpoint, I had gotten back to extensive walking, hiking. I had gotten back to cycling, was cycling on upwards to 50-mile rides, swimming. I had gotten to the point where I was getting more comfortable and feeling comfortable trusting my right leg in jogging and running to a degree. And in any event, then I was faced with the potential for surgery, and we looked to space out another CT scan to see from the standpoint of what pace was my aorta growing, my lower abdominal aorta, and came to find out that it's over a 6 to 9 month span, it grew to over 6 centimeter, and it was approaching 6.3, 6.4. And the recommendation was I needed to have surgery. I had my brother help me. He's an interventional radiologist, and we reviewed all the scans and just realized to make well, at the end of the day, it wasn't necessarily a difficult choice. I mean, any surgery is difficult to make, but I felt as if it was something that had to happen. And we scheduled my surgery for last year, June 21st of 2021. And I had the better part of 6 to 9 months to prep this time, whereas the first surgery was emergent. This time, I had all this time to plan, and that was really tough. I would say, take all the time that you need to get unfortunately, your affairs in order, whether that's, whatever you need to get in order. For me, it meant a living trust. And that really helped me because I felt like I was taking care of my family, my kids, financially. I had already had, a life insurance and annuity in place for them. And this really set me at ease as much as it could, even though I was dealing with what I was dealing with. So as we approached my surgery, it finally got to the point where I was ready to go. And it was another major open surgery, 7.5-hour surgery. That wasn't something that could be minimally invasive since I already had a prior dissection. So Dr. Racklin opened me up from just below my left chest in a jagged way all the way down to about 6 inches below my belly button, and swept over all my organs to get to my lower aorta, which is down, as I understand it, down closer towards your lower spine. And I would say too that in all my prep for surgery, this was really scary because my doctors had let me know there was anything could have potentially happened. I could have lost my leg. Of course, just going under anesthesia, you can't survive. You might not survive. I, a lower, any organ failure, any number of different things could have happened. And fortunately, the surgery was a success. I stayed in the hospital that time for 2 weeks afterwards. It was pretty difficult, but I would say that, the recovery afterwards, I don't know, probably fairly similar to my first surgery, although I wasn't in the hospital as long. I was a little bit more aware this time of what had happened and how serious it was, just because of the years of experience that I had. So in any event, I got through after the surgery, this time with all that's been in the news and all that's well documented about opiates. I only had took an opiate, which was Percocet, for barely a week after I got home. And that was needed really so my body could just, I was primarily sleeping. My mom was here helping me at home. My kids would come and visit. At that point, I started walking and on upward, from there. And it just took the better part of, 6 months to really get to the point where I was felt getting to feel a little bit more normal, closer to 9 months to a year, where I really felt I started feeling like myself again. I was back, exercising, walking. We had a follow-up CT scan, maybe it's been at this point 4 or 5 months ago, 6 months ago, which checked through fine and everything recovered well. So thankfully to say, at this point, 2/3 of my aorta is now a graft tube. They placed a graft tube in my lower aorta. They cut out the dissection, or Dr. Racklin did, I should say, and placed the graft tube inside, took the clamps off my aorta, which were in multiple places, sewed me back up. I didn't have any necessarily, many negative reactions to the surgery. And it just took me some time to recover. And now I feel like I'm back, I'm back running, and feel really good. So, in any event, again, like I'd say, my advice to you, if this is something you're facing to whatever degree, is really take the time to understand that it's major surgery, that you need to take all the time that you need. Some may need more than others. I know that there are some that get in and out of the hospital fairly quickly and they're able to move on. And there are others that it's much more debilitating. They have a hard time with breathing, moving, exercising. The concern that I have now, and that my doctors have placed on me a restriction, is lifting heavy weights. So I'm really not supposed to lift anything more than 20 pounds on an ongoing basis. And as far as extensive endurance, I'm really, I've been given kind of a green light to do what I wish, as long as everything is within reason and I'm not out there, totally hammering, which I still do sometimes, but, let's keep that quiet. But in any event, yeah, it's been pretty surreal. I would say that for me, it's only been very recent that I connected with Aortic Hope through the John Ritter Foundation, through seeing the Purple Pinky Promise. It really opened my eyes to the support that's out there, because there's an aspect that I can understand, that there's a potential for post-traumatic stress and survival guilt, which I've started, again, seeing therapists through Kaiser to really take the time to understand a bit more about myself and how this has affected me, because I want to be proactive and don't want to get to the point of being in distress. And there are certain things that have happened that that make me realize that I need to take the time for myself. And that's what I'd say is really pay attention to not rushing back if you're not able to, or if you're able to not rush back. If you have the support, seek out that support of those that have dealt with what you've dealt with, because for me, that's been really hard, talking, whether it's family, friends, and trying to explain what I've been through, because unless you've walked in my shoes, and unless I've walked in your shoes, I have no idea. And for me, I've really felt like it's been hard to deal with. And now with this group, I really found, I feel like I found a home from that standpoint. So it's a little emotional, and I think it's fine if you feel emotions, feel those emotions, and understand that you need to take time for yourself, be introspective, look at the things that maybe, because of the fact of these type of vascular diseases, high blood pressure, hypertension is such a prevailing point of affecting this type of condition, that you really need to pay attention to that in yourself, and look to find natural ways, is the way I look at it, to help bring down your blood pressure. As of now, after my initial surgery in 2015, I was on 14 plus different medications, over 30, close to 35 pills a day. Now I take 2 medications. I take warfarin, which is generic for Coumadin, as a blood thinner for my aortic valve, which I'll take for the rest of my life. And I monitor it with checking my blood, usually once a month. And I take a blood pressure medication, metoprolol, helps with lowering my blood pressure. I've gotten to the point where I may not necessarily need to take that anymore down the road, just because of, exercising, keeping your weight down, working on, your nutrition, trying to stay away from sugars, hydrogenated oils, fatty foods, and eating more vegetables, fruits, what have you. So in any event, that's my story. And I really would like to thank Aortic Hope for giving me the opportunity to be able to tell you what's going on in my life. And, I'd really like to thank all my family, my friends, that have been so close to me and supported me, as well as Kaiser, all my doctors, obviously Dr. Rosenberg, Dr. Racklin. They've been amazing. That group, I couldn't say nothing more about all the amazing things that Kaiser has been to me. And my second surgery, by the way, was at a Kaiser hospital here in San Diego. So I understand we'll open things up for questions at this point, and or if anyone has questions for me. Otherwise, I hope everyone has a great Saturday, and just wanted to thank everybody. I'm very grateful to be here.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks for everything that you've shared today. Velda McKenzie says hi. You might have remembered her from the support group.
Oh, excellent. Hey, nice. Nice. How are you?
She says, nice job, Dan. Your story will help others.
Oh, excellent. Great.
And we have a comment from Ryan. He's another one you might have remembered from the support group. He says, kudos for acknowledging the need to take time and see therapists and healing mentally and emotionally.
Oh, thanks, Ryan. Yeah, I know we were talking about that recently. I think it's really important to take all the time that you need. And I think these days mental health is such a hot button, out there, whether it's, certain people in the public eye that you see that are opening up about their mental health. Matthew Perry recently, certain addictions that are out there.
Video feed, Dan. Click the button.
Oh.
There you go.
There we go. I think you need to take the appropriate time to look at yourself and seek out those where you can get the help that you need.
Right on. Have you been paying attention to how post-traumatic stress has affected you now that it's something you're aware of?
I have. I recently talked with my therapist about that, and it's something that we're pursuing as far as analyzing if it's something that's affecting me personally. We talked about recently in the support group, it's something that I'm aware of. I'm aware of certain attitudes that I have that have affected me about death. That first surgery I had a 50-50 chance to live in that surgery room, whether to come out of the room or alive or not. And over time, that really, I never realized as much of how much has affected me. And I feel like I do have survival guilt. And my look at death, especially after my dad passed and my friends' dads have passed, something I've experienced. So I'm trying to be proactive about it and take care of myself for that.
That's good. During your path to dropping the amount of meds that you were on, how closely were you working with your medical professional to get your physical stamina and physical health up to date? Like, was this like every couple weeks, once a month?
Well, it initially I was in a wheelchair for the better part of a year, and I'd say like I'd use the wheelchair if I had to go to longer distances. I still could get up and walk. And I still have somewhat of a slight limp. I have what they call drop foot. My right foot doesn't flex up that well. It does enough so I can drive and use the gas pedal. I need to lay off that a little bit, but yeah, I mean, as far as physical therapy, because of the fact that I had peripheral nerve damage in my right leg, I saw a physical therapist. I believe it was for the better part of a year, and I would go in and see him every 2 to 3 weeks.
Oh wow!
And we'd work on, my overall flexibility and improving my range of motion in my right knee. So that was something that was ongoing for a better part of a year. Mm-hmm.
Cynthia Bernard chimes in and she says, "Thank you, Dan. My husband listened with me and thinks he exactly knows how serious it could have been. He went through this, but in an amazingly short period of time." She's from our caregiver group. She's a wonderful lady.
Oh, awesome.
Right.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
It's yeah, like I said, they're all different types. It sounds like almost everyone's story could be different from how it affected you. So yeah, thank you.
Very much so. Ryan has a second question for you. He says, "Sorry if I missed this. With young age and family history of vascular issues and at-risk boys, did you pursue genetics? And if not, are you chatting with cardio about surveillance for the boys?"
Yes, yeah, through Kaiser. I did a full genetic workup and of what's available from a workup standpoint, which again is such a small amount compared to what potentially could be in the future. I don't have any certain precursors other than what we know to be my family history. And I have come to understand that once my kids are get into their early 20s, that we really have to look at having them have CT scans and checking their history or checking their physical, vascular system to see where they're at with this disease.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I did take time to do that.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. Thank you, Ryan. I believe we had Dr. Fisher on yesterday or 2 days ago, and she was speaking with about genetics in general and talking about how it's better to have that information so that you can remediate lifestyle changes. For example, Karen, when she found out that this could be passed down to her children, she made sure that her boy didn't play football. She was like, "You have to find something that's got less impact." And so, that conversation is the kind of conversation that comes with that genetic testing based on, you know, specifically that family history.
Yeah, unfortunately, I already missed that mark because my oldest son's
Crashing into it.
starting quarterback for his high school freshman team. So
Excellent.
he already has the bug, and that's his passion. So we're going to have to figure out a way around that.
Yeah. Thank God he wears the red shirts during practice, right?
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah.
All right. Let's see if anybody else has any more questions. I still have questions about like how long it took for you to get to sleep on a regular basis because in the support groups, you know, I listen to they very rarely talk about sleep, and it's because sometimes the medication knocks them straight out, but other times
Mhm.
people they're stuck in that there's a word for it, something about I think it's hypervigilance, and that's where you know right as soon as you're about to go to sleep, you get put into fight or flight mode. You're now paying attention to every ping and pang, and this doesn't just affect the survivors. This is the kind of thing that can affect caregivers as well. Caregivers will, you know, they'll be laying there, and if you know if your loved one snores and he stops snoring for a second, you're in a panic, you know, or you know, or if he starts snoring, you know, one way or the other, things like that. And so when you know, obviously you were in a forced coma. You had your first 90 days. When you first got out and you were in that first surgery, did you find that it took months and months and months of time for your sleep to get regulated, or was that wasn't a concern until later?
It wasn't a concern till later. Yeah, I mean, I think, as I mentioned, I was on opiates for the better part of over a year, um, and I didn't realize it at the time. It wasn't until afterwards that I had firsthand knowledge to realize how much it affected me. Looking back on how much I was sleeping per day, I would get up in the morning. Morphine that I took was more of a steady morphine throughout the day, and Dilaudid was more, you know, multiple pills throughout the day for more short-term sharp pain. So I would get up in the morning and take Dilaudid, and I would go back to sleep for a few hours, get up around 10 o'clock. So I didn't have any problem from that sleeping standpoint. It wasn't until after and looking back that I really, for a while there, for the better part of that whole period of 2016, I was almost a zombie, really. And maybe I may have felt like I was managing myself fine, but I wasn't. And from that point on, I did start to notice, like I said, the clicking of the valve, and that really made me anxious. Um, that has been something that I've dealt with in my life, is anxiety. And so that really was a spark plug for me. But yeah, I mean, I've never, you know, from that point, at this point now, I still do deal with some difficulty staying asleep, waking up in the middle of the night. So I have supplemented a bit with like edible cannabis to help at night, THC. I think that's okay to say. We're in, you know, it's something that's legal here in California and in different areas throughout the country, and it's worked really well for me. I don't use it all the time, but when it gets to a point where I feel like it would, you know, help me through the night, then I'll use it. And otherwise, I simply use what's the other one with an M? I forget. That's naturally in your
melatonin,
body.
the melatonin
Yeah,
thing.
melatonin.
Yeah.
That actually works really well for me. So, you know, I just try to, as much as I can, just try to stay natural.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Well, I want to thank you for your story. I want to thank you for your time.
Thanks, Josh.
Any last advice you want to give to anybody that's going on this path? I mean, you pretty much nailed it. Self-advocacy. Make sure you get in charge of your own medical information. You were.
Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, thanks, Josh. I mean, I'd say for me, one thing that helps me, you know, you can, it's real easy in life. And I think I've been so introspective along this, having this surgery really opens your mind up to, you know, your life's purpose. And, you know, not to get too deep, but I think there's nowhere else but to get deep when you're faced with something like this. And, you know, for me, you know, I really taken a lot of time to analyze what my purpose is and where my focus is in life, which is on my kids and my, you know, being there for them. So I want to do everything I can to do that. And that's all focused in and around advocacy for health, nutrition, fitness, and whatever I can do from my standpoint to spread that word. And that's why, Aortic Hope has been great to find people that have a like-minded mindset. I think take the time to look back on the past, but then really focus as much as you can on the future and look forward, find that purpose and set goals for yourself and look to, what your plans are going to be and dream big. I'm 50 years old. I just turned 50 this year in April. And, I feel as great as I've felt in years and feel really, comfortable with myself and where I'm going. And I think you need to set, I shouldn't say you need, but for me, what's helped me is I've set goals. I continue to set goals and I still keep searching and learning and finding different ways that can help me grow. So that's the advice I'd give.
Right on. Dan, how are you? This is your cousin, John. I just wanted to tell you how proud I am of you for the hard work you've done on this journey. Love you, cousin. I'm looking forward to our next run. Great chat.
Oh, John's awesome. Yeah, John and I have known we've known each other our whole lives since birth, and he's always been there for me. And yeah, he's a special guy to me. So yeah, thanks, John. I appreciate it. We'll go for that run again soon.
Right on. All right, thank you, everyone. We're going to close off. You guys can reach out to Daniel Hulse through the support groups if those of you that are in a support group. Go ahead and close off, Dan.
All right, thanks. Take care, guys. Have a great Saturday.